We now continue CommRadio's NFL draft coverage with another exclusive interview. I'm Ryan Berti, and this time we're with ESPN's Trey Wingo, who's been kind enough to once again share some of his time with us. Trey, thanks for stopping by.
Oh, Ryan, happy to be with you guys.
All right, now while the draft is nothing new to you, this year you're part of some changes happening with ESPN's draft coverage. For years you've been hosting the later rounds of the NFL draft, but for the first time this year you're going to be taking up full-time duties that include anchoring the first round. How much different is this upgrade in responsibility from recent years, and how does it feel to be handed the reins from a guy like Chris Berman?
Well, let me address the second part of that first. Boom has been great to me, and really all the draft is a bunch of names being called in a certain order. And years and years and years and years ago, when the NFL was first approached by ESPN about televising the draft, I believe their response was, why would anyone want to do that? And one of the reasons why someone would want to do that is because we had someone here that made the draft funny, interesting, entertaining, and informative, and that was Chris Berman. And Boom has been doing this for a long, long time. And, he and I have sort of chatted over the last couple of years about, hey, get ready, I'm not going to be doing this much longer, blah, 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 blah. So this has sort of been percolating for a while. And the day that the official announcement was made, Boom sent me a text and we talked. He did the hard part. He laid the foundation and made the draft an event. All I have to do is not burn down the house. And I have a responsibility to continue to do what he did and keep people informed, entertained, and try and move the train along. So that part of it is really it's an homage to what Boom has been able to do all these years. And for me, in terms of how it's different, the only thing that's different is just more. I mean, I'm not going to change anything the way I've done for rounds 2 through 7 for round 1. I'm just going to prepare the same way, and that's read until your eyes bleed and have as much information as you can as possible, and try and get the best information and analysis out of the people on the set with me, whether it's Mel Lewis and John Gruden on day 1, or Mel Lewis and Todd McShay in days 2 and day 3.
Once again, if you're joining us, we're here with ESPN's Trey Wingo. So let's move into the draft itself and talk a little bit about the team that has the number 1 pick, the Browns. They've been trying to figure out draft day for quite some time now, but now they've got that number 1 pick. They've got another pick inside the top 12, and they've got plenty of other hoarded picks throughout the next 2 drafts. Do you think this is the year that they find a way to get it right? And if so, how do they do it?
Oh, Ryan, they have to get it right. I mean, this is the 5th time since 2007 rather, that they've had 2 first-round picks. And let's just go through the previous 8 for a second, shall we? 2007, they picked Joe Thomas. Home run, absolute stud, going in the Hall of Fame. Their second first-round pick in 2007 was Brady Quinn. That did not work. Fast forward to 2012. Their first pick, running back out of Alabama, Trent Richardson. That did not work. Their second first-round pick in 2012 was Brandon Weeden, quarterback, Oklahoma State, who's now hanging on for dear life behind Tom Savage as the Houston Texans' backup quarterback. Fast forward to 2014, where they got Justin Gilbert, cornerback out of Oklahoma State, with their first-round pick. He's now off the team. Their second first-round pick in 2014 was Johnny Manziel, who's been an absolute dumpster fire and is out of the league. And in 2015, they picked up Danny Shelton, giant nose tackle out of Washington, to solidify a run defense, which was one of the worst in the NFL last year. And their second first-round pick was Cameron Irving, a center who they played at guard for a couple of years before finally moving him inside to replace Alex Mack, who went on to have a Super Bowl season with the Atlanta Falcons. And Cameron Irving has been, at best, fine. So really, they're 1 for 8 on their last 4 chances at having 2 first-round picks. They have to make these picks work. Otherwise, it's just going to continue the same cycle of failure in the draft for the Browns.
So what's the most ideal scenario for the Browns, and how do they get that done here in this draft?
Yes, the best possible scenario would be for them to pick 2 Pro Bowl players. How about that? That's the best possible scenario. Whether it's going to be Mitchell Trubisky or Myles Garrett, we'll see. We've heard there's a split inside the organization at number 1. Look, they have to at some point take a quarterback. I think that's a given. Is it at 1? Is it at 12? Do they take a chance on a guy later like Brad Kaya out of Miami or a Josh Dobbs out of Tennessee? They have had 26 different starting quarterbacks since they came back into the league in 1999, by far the most of any team in the NFL over that time frame. They have passed on the likes of Carson Wentz. They have passed on the likes of Ben Roethlisberger and many others over this time frame. Hell, they could have gotten Dak Prescott in any of the first 3 rounds last year. But a lot of teams could have done that too. They have to find a quarterback, whether it's at 1 or 12 or somewhere else. That is something that must be addressed in this draft.
So a lot of eyes are on Tennessee's pick at number 5 overall in the first round as a likely spot to be traded away. Who do you feel like are the most likely candidates to maybe move up in a trade and take that spot?
Well, people always talk about, well, they should trade down. But you have to find someone who's willing to trade down with you. You can't just do it. And I'm not sure there's a bunch of players in this draft that a lot of teams feel comfortable trading up to get. So there's one player I think that's generating more buzz than anybody else in this draft right now, and that's the running back out of Stanford, Christian McCaffrey. He is the one guy that teams are really thinking about moving up to get, because Carolina needs a running back at 8. Jacksonville needs a running back. Philadelphia would certainly love to see him at 14, but I don't think there's any chance he stays till 14. So if you're going to trade, I think that's the guy you're trading up to get, and the question then becomes how high do you need to go to get him? Because is Jacksonville going to take Leonard Fournette, or they may take Christian McCaffrey? Does that mean that the Carolina Panthers then are going to take McCaffrey if Jacksonville takes Fournette? So then you'd have to jump ahead of 8. The Saints would love to have him, but I don't think there's any chance he's going to be there at 11, and they just signed Adrian Peterson, and they need massive defensive help as well. So I'm not sure how much in the market the Saints are anymore for Christian McCaffrey. But that's the one guy that we're getting the most buzz about trading up on. It's Christian McCaffrey.
You've often described the NFL draft as the only true reality TV show where anything unpredictable can happen. I want to talk about a few of those unpredictable players that could end up being wild cards come draft night. And starting out, I want to talk about Jabril Peppers. He's already a guy with a lot of question marks in terms of where he fits in the league, and now, as you know, he tested positive for a dilute sample at the Combine. Now, I know the NFL treats dilute samples as the same as a failed drug test, but do you feel like owners treat it the same way as someone who might test positive for, say, marijuana and could result in a huge slide?
Well, let me put it this way. It depends on the player. Okay, I think this really hurts Jabril Peppers more than the other person who tested positive for a diluted sample, and that would be Reuben Foster, the linebacker out of Alabama, because Jabril Peppers doesn't have a defined position. He played a little corner, he played a little safety, he played some running back, he returned kicks, he played nickel, he blitzed off the edge a little bit, but he doesn't have a defined position. So he was a borderline first-round talent to begin with an undefined position. Now with a positive for a diluted sample, which counts as a failed drug test, which means you're in the program once you're drafted, you're in the NFL's drug program, I think that does potentially knock him out of the first round. Whereas Reuben Foster's tape is amazing. Reuben Foster makes all kinds of plays from a determined position on one of the best defenses in college football this past year. So I think it doesn't hurt Reuben Foster as much as it hurts Jabril Peppers. Now, there are other things with Reuben Foster that would give teams some concern about some off-field issues and things that he's had to deal with. But in terms of the diluted sample, it's certainly going to hurt Jabril Peppers more than it's going to hurt Reuben Foster.
On Jabril Peppers, talked a little bit about how he's kind of a great athlete, but he's got that undefined position. What position do you think is going to suit him best at the next level? Or do you feel like he could end up being one of those rare, successful multi-position players in the NFL?
Well, there are some that look at him as a Deion Buchanan type who came into the league as a safety and then sort of became a linebacker more than anything else. I'm not sure he's big enough for that. I think he's a safety. But there's a skill set that goes along with being a safety. And you put in the tape and you watch Jamal Adams, the kid out of LSU, that's a plug-and-play safety. You get him in there, he's going to do everything you need him to do. And he understands how to play. His lineage is great. His dad was a 19th overall selection in the first round in 1985, a running back out of Kentucky. He knows it. He gets it. And I'm not saying Jabril can't get it, but if you're taking a guy in the first round, you want him to understand the position he's going to play, unless you're willing to bench a quarterback for a couple of years. So I think that's a problem for Jabril Peppers. I think he's going to eventually be a safety, but the question is how good of a safety is he going to be?
And finally, as you mentioned earlier, the draft setup this year will be on top of the Rocky steps. Rocky, of course, is a great underdog story in itself, but among the many stories of this year's draftees, What is one story in particular you are excited to talk about come draft day?
No, there's a ton of them. There's a kid, Xavier Copeland, a cornerback out of Portland State, who realized he had a heart defect and was going to have to get it fixed, a valve, when he was 30 or 40, until they realized as a sophomore in high school, when he was playing 3 sports, his heart was pumping at about 40%. So he had open heart surgery as a teenager and still managed to come back and play collegiate football, and probably is going to get drafted. There's a receiver named Krishan Hogan out of Marion College or Marion University, who went to another school first in Indianapolis and didn't get along with the coaches, got a C in his football evaluation, the one class he took as football, and then quit, spent his time in Indianapolis on the overnight janitorial service at the Indianapolis Convention Center, cleaning toilets, worked at an inflatable slide place called Monkey Joe's for kids, just so he could make enough money to get back into school, and then became the only NIAI player in football last year to be invited to the Combine, has a chance to get drafted. There's a kid named Michael Roberts, a tight end out of Toledo, who didn't have the grades to go to Ohio University, academically ineligible, so he got admission into Toledo, but couldn't get on scholarship because he didn't have grades. So he did everything he could possibly do. He took out loans. He worked at a Five Guys Burgers and Fries near the place. He sold steak knives. He DJ'd parties on the weekend just to stay afloat so he could pay for his tuition to stay in and eventually get that scholarship. He's going to get drafted, and he actually pulled a 3.0 several semesters at Toledo, which he'd never done in high school. So I admire those kind of stories. And the thing that I would tell everybody as we wrap this up, remember, you're not drafting a product. You're drafting a person. Every one of these kids, first of all, is a kid, and secondly, he's an actual human being. People sometimes see NFL players like they saw teachers when they were in elementary school. You're just supposed to be in this school Monday through Friday. If I see you outside of school, that's weird for me. No. These are real people, and they're real persons that have real lives. You see them on Sundays, Mondays, and Thursday nights, but they're actual human beings. They're not widgets, and we're going to try and present them as such.
Definitely an important thing to remember, and there are a lot of great stories in this year's draft. Once again, a big thanks to you, Trey, for being able to share some of your thoughts and some time from your busy schedule. You can catch him every day of ESPN's NFL draft coverage that kicks off this Thursday at 8 p.m. You can also check him out on NFL Live, which airs each weekday at 2 p.m. Trey, once again, as always, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being able to stop by.
You got it, Ryan. Take care.